Idly-ho there, folks. Hope everyone's well and life is treating you well. Tonight's little ramble is going to be me talking about some recent acquisitions. One of the things with gaming products, is kind of the cool little things that you pick up along the way. And I thought people might be interested. I picked these up at a local game store in the Oak Ridge area. And another thing that I've got to show I got from a friend. But let's start with the recent purchases. These are for Alternity, which is an excellent bit of gaming history there. So in 1998, TSR came out with a science fiction game called Alternity, which was sort of their generic sci-fi RPG, and then had multiple settings and such for it. This one right here is alternate realities and such, and it's written by Bruce Cardell, who recently came out with a game called The Strange, which shares some of the same themes that are found in here. I've got the Game Master book and the campaign guide to Star Drive, but these were at the same store. And this one is Arms and Equipment Guide for Star Drive. So, science fiction arms and equipment. And there's some interesting things in here. I mean, there's some cybernetics, some nice artwork. The artwork's pretty solid. Despite the fact that things were not great for TSR in the 90s, they were going to be bought by Wizards of the Coast eventually. So obviously things were not going great for them by that point. But they could still afford to pay for some good artwork. One of the things I find interesting about this particular book is there is a texture to the cover. There are lines on of texture to go along with the artwork. It's a little thing. It's probably cost them more than it was worth doing, but it's still kind of neat. Star Drive was their sort of, I guess you would kind of call it a spiritual successor to Star Frontiers. It's a much more epic space opera-y type setting. They also did one called Dark Matter, which is got a little more of a tinge of horror to it. And they did a Gamma World setting book for it and everything. There are a lot of people who still love Alternity. I've never actually played it, but I thought it was interesting. It was curious, and they've got a lot of the books down there, so I've been picking them up. Now, the other book that I picked up from the game store was this, Curse Strahd, the new Ravenloft adventure from Wizards of the Coast, and it's got great art in it. Look, so I haven't been able to give it a full read through, but definitely feels like there is interesting things going on here. The original Ravenloft was unusual for its time. It was very story-driven, very role-play-driven adventure when it came out. Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman worked on it. They would later go on to do Dragonlance, so, they're famous and stuff. But this adventure, unlike the previous ones, is pretty heavy with the maps. It also has, in the back, lots of text props, which you're presumably going to copy, because I'm not going to rip them out of the book or anything. But lots of text props, and a deck of cards, the Tarot cards, which are basically the tarot related to Ravenloft. A few things that I find interesting here. They plant this firmly in Forgotten Realms. Barovia is firmly planted in Forgotten Realms this time around. They give descriptions of the hooks for the factions from the Sword Coast region that would send you there and why. And that's a choice. It's an interesting choice. And in the thing with Ravenloft is it's always sort of existed off into its own thing, right? It's its own realm that you sort of wander into from any other realm. So, you could have it set in anywhere, really, and it would work just as well. I could run a Mistar game using it. I could do it in Eberron or what have you. Even Pathfinder, really. It would work just as well. So, I've got this map that comes in. It gives you details of the region there, if you're interested. And on the back, it has three-dimensional maps of, I don't want to give away too much detail, so I'm just showing it for a moment or two, of the interiors of the castles and such. I think it's really well done. I think it's an excellent piece. Good way to add, good way to sort of execute something that is that classic. I mean, Ravenloft is one of the classic adventure modules, right up there with Temple of Elemental Evil and Tomb of Horrors. It's one of the most iconic dungeons in D&D. And, of course, they had to go ahead and do it. And I think what I've seen so far says this is a decent take on it. It's very... you explore a lot in this. There's also elements of using the Tarot to sort of influence where you find things and where you find people. So it's pretty neat. I think it's worth picking up if you're planning on running an adventure. There's not, like some of the previous adventures that they've released had player content in it, right? New spells, there's not a lot of that in here. There are a couple of new monsters. I got were-ravens in here, which is pretty cool. And they've got the Tarot, which would fit into a lot of different games, really. So I think it's worth checking out. Just for that, I mean, if you're running a game, even if you're not going to run this, you might find some useful bits in here. There's also a couple of magic items listed and an extra background. So it's from a player standpoint, there's not a lot to buy in here. You don't really want this as a player. Like I said, some of the other ones had a little bit of player content in them, so like new racial builds or something like that. That's not here. This is really purely a GM product, which is fine. It's good to have a good GM product. They just did the Sword Coast Legends book, Adventures of the Sword Coast, or Adventurer's Guide to the Sword Coast, or something like that, which is very much largely more player focused, though it's got a lot of GM stuff as well. But it's much more player friendly. And the last bit of my acquisitions that I thought I'd talk about are these. I don't know if it will focus or not. I have been talking about getting involved into painting some minis. And I thought it would be an interesting thing. It's one of the few geeky hobbies I never really got into for various reasons. But honestly, Hero Forge made me think about it. And I decided I would try it. But I have a number of friends who have unpainted minis. And in their collections. And they were like, dude, you should come and steal some minis from me to practice with. So I went and stole some. Now, these are all from Clan Wars, which was the Legend of the Five Rings related war game. So they all have a strongly Japanese theme to it, which is fine. They're deeply intricate, deeply detailed, and I look forward to trying my hand at it. But anyways, I thought people would be interested in seeing them before I paint them. I will probably take some pictures of them in detail and use them in a future video so you can see the process and what I did. Because I like process. I like process videos. One of my favorite shows on YouTube is a thing called Men at Arms, which is where they make weapons from various games and movies and what have you. And I think it's a great show. I love it to death. And one of the things that occurred to me while I was talking to my buddy Adam, who provided these to me, he is a master boffer sword crafter. The LARPs that I've spent years playing, they generally tend to steer away from the prepackaged swords from Camisil or what have you, where it's got the latex coating on them, mainly because of some safety concerns, and there's some strengths to the Camisil ones and some weaknesses. And one of the classic strengths is that they always look really cool. And the classic, do a boffer sword with a PVC pipe and insulation foam and tape and everything doesn't necessarily look as cool. But because we didn't use the Camisil stuff, a lot of the guys who do the boffer weapons actually have gotten really good at doing their own custom ones that look almost as good as anything Camisil puts out, but with, to meet our rather stringent safety standards. And it occurred to me that it would be interesting to see sort of an even more geeky version of Men at Arms, where it was like Men at Arms LARP edition, where people were making really nice looking boffer weapons and really nice looking armor and prop pieces and what have you. I'm not sure if I have the time and energy to do that project, but I think it's a project that needs doing. So I don't know. I think it would make an interesting show. So I may run it past a few people who maybe have more time than I do, and certainly more handy skill. I can make some chainmail. That's about it. That's not true. I can do some other things, but yeah, having the time to do it would be the hard part. But it might be worth doing. It might be fun. Anyway, that's my recent collection of gear and things, and I thought it'd make good material for an episode. I'll be back tomorrow. I hope all of you will be, and that you'll be safe. And if you like this, like it, share it, subscribe. Go check out the Patreon if you feel like helping out. And thanks for watching. Stay out of trouble and keep gaming.